I'm going to go in depth in the latest smear against China, part of this Western propaganda war being waged against Beijing, and in particular regards to the ongoing situation in Xinjiang. I'm going to show you how the West is still lying about this, but I'm also going to talk about how this goes much further than just a mere propaganda war, how this is much more serious than that, and where this is all possibly heading. Let's get started. So this is the Associated Press. This is from July 22nd, 2021. And just look at how you're being misled, starting with the title, Room for 10,000 inside China's largest detention center. Room for 10,000. They're saying they think it can hold 10,000, but it's not holding 10,000. They will even admit that in the article. But look at how dishonestly they start the article out. The Uyghur inmates sat in uniform rows with their legs crossed in lotus position and their backs ramrod straight, numbered and tagged, gazing at a television playing grainy black and white images of Chinese Communist Party history. This is one of an estimated 240 cells in just one section of Uighurs number 3 detention center in Debunking. Seen by Associated Press journalists, granted extraordinary access during a state-led tour to China's far west Xinjiang region. The detention center is the largest in the country and possibly the world. Stop right there. This is an absolute lie, and it takes less than a second for Google to tell you that. Go to Google, type in largest prison in the world. In less than 1 second, it returns Rikers Island, New York City, the largest prison in the world. They're saying that this complex sprawls over 220 acres. This BBC article all about Rikers Island, published in 2019, tells you all about it. They tell you that it's sitting on 413 acres, so almost twice as big as the detention center in Xinjiang. And they're saying that at the time of writing, 7,000 inmates, but it had a peak of 20,000 inmates in the 1990s. So as you're going to see, AP admits there's not even 10,000 detainees. There's probably not even half that number at that facility in Xinjiang. They're saying that that may possibly be the largest center in the world. It's not even close. Rikers Island is almost twice as big and holds more prisoners. And Los Angeles County Jail, this is from Los Angeles Almanac, Los Angeles County Jail System by the numbers, largest jail in the US, has an average of 14,000 inmates. So again, more inmates than AP is even saying that facility in Xinjiang can hold. The largest in the country and possibly the world is just a complete absolute lie that took literally a second to check on Google to debunk. So this is what we're getting ourselves into here. I'm going to go in depth in this article, but you could already see it's not starting out too well. And this is one of the sources that YouTube, Twitter, Facebook will tell us are trusted sources, and anyone disagreeing with them is spreading fake news and disinformation. And look at this, where they say about the 220 acres. They're saying it makes it twice as large as Vatican City. And then come down here to this image. They're showing you the satellite image of the center, and they have the footprint of the Vatican City. Why do they have the footprint of the Vatican City there? Is Vatican City the second largest prison in the world? And they're showing you how big this is in comparison to the second largest prison in the world. The Vatican City has absolutely nothing to do with detention centers or the size of them. It is a completely irrelevant comparison. Chinese officials declined to say how many inmates were there, saying the number varied, but the AP estimated the center could hold roughly 10,000 people, and many more if crowded, based on satellite imagery and the cells and benches seen during the tour. And I just want to point out that the next time they mention the benches they've seen during the tour is down here, almost at the bottom of the article. The number 3 center did not appear to be at full capacity. One section was closed, officials said, and 6 to 10 inmates sat in each cell, taking up only half the benches, which means The facility is at half capacity or less because an entire section was closed. But the latest official government statistics available for 2019 show that there were about twice as many arrests in Xinjiang that year than before the crackdown started in 2017. First, remember that year, 2017, because I'm going to show you another article from AP about what was going on in Xinjiang in 2017 and why China really had no choice but to start enacting security measures in Xinjiang. But note what they're saying here. They're trying to conflate the number of detainees in this center with the number of arrests. And I'm going to show you how this is completely flawed and dishonest. The United States, according to Statista, has the highest prisoner rate with 639 prisoners per 100,000 people. They have roughly 2.12 million people in prison in 2020. If we look at the number of arrests in the United States, the number is much, much higher because not everyone that is arrested ends up going to jail. So here, this is from the US government's Office of Justice Programs estimated number of arrests by offense and race 2019, all ages, all offenses, 10 million. So there's 10 million people arrested per year. There's somewhere around 2.1, 2.2 million people in prison in the United States. Arrests don't equal the number of people that are in facilities. Sometimes people are arrested and then released the same day. They're not ever going to go to a detention center. So this is AP, almost every paragraph misleading and lying to its readers. As we go through this article, you're going to see them over and over again putting war against terror in quotation marks, as if there was no terrorism going on, and this is just an excuse Beijing is using to enact these policies in Xinjiang, apparently for no reason at all except to just be cruel to the people of Xinjiang. This is what AP is trying to convey here. But I want to point something out really important. This is an AP article from 2017, AP exclusive. Uighurs fighting in Syria take aim at China. 2017. So that's when we saw the spike in arrests. As a matter of fact, if we go to the AP article, they're going to show you it was like this. And then there was this big spike in arrests. And then there were these big spikes in sentencings. So this is what was going on in 2017. They're talking about how thousands of Uyghur extremists traveled from Xinjiang, China to Syria to join Al-Qaeda and ISIS. I want to show you this Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty graphic. This is a media platform funded by the US State Department. And they're going to show you by nation how many extremists traveled to Syria and Iraq to fight. We could see from Russia, 2,700. From France, 1,600. Saudi Arabia, 2,000 to 2,500. From Pakistan, 400 or 500. So you can see all of these numbers here. Turkey, 900 to 1,000. The UK, 750. From the United States, over 100. And here is AP admitting, let's go down here and take a look. This is AP admitting Uyghur activists and Syrian and Chinese officials estimate that at least 5,000 Uyghurs have gone to Syria to fight. Xinjiang, China, the Uyghur extremists by far seem to be making up the largest number of foreign fighters flowing into the region. Let's see how bad the terrorist situation was in Xinjiang and in China and actually globally because of Uyghur extremism, according to Associated Press, who's now putting war on terrorism in quotation marks in their most recent smear piece. Uyghur militants have killed hundreds, if not thousands, in attacks inside China in a decades-long insurgency that initially targeted police and other symbols of Chinese authority, but in recent years also included civilians. Extremists with knives killed 33 people at a train station in 2014. Abroad, they bombed the Chinese embassy in Kyrgyzstan in September last year. In 2014, they killed 25 people in an attack on a Thai shrine popular with Chinese tourists. First of all, that was 2015. And here is another AP article from 2015 covering that incident. So AP can't even get the most basic facts right in their articles. And then we see in articles today where they're trying to downplay it, a series of knifings and bombings by a small number of extremists. And you could see how they've gone from admitting how bad the problem was in Xinjiang to trying to cover it up and minimize it. Because what they're trying to do is undermine China's efforts to deal with this. So this is Associated Press admitting how huge this terrorist problem in Xinjiang was. It was so huge that it was expanding beyond China's borders. There were terrorist attacks in Thailand, Kyrgyzstan. There was 5,000 extremists in Syria joining Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And this extremism isn't homegrown in Xinjiang. It wasn't as if the Chinese government was oppressing them and they just decided to choose extremism to fight back. This was a very deliberate, engineered program to radicalize the people in Xinjiang. I want to show you how this was depicted more recently, and then I'm going to show you some older articles that reveal exactly what was going on in Xinjiang. This is from Radio Free Asia. This is another US State Department-funded media platform. Xinjiang authorities confiscate extremist Qurans from Uyghur Muslims. And they go through here and they're saying that any of these Qurans that have been printed between a certain year, they need to be confiscated. And they don't really give any details as to why that is. And they try to suggest that China is trying to replace the Qurans with state-approved versions, and they're trying to get rid of all of the authentic Qurans. But this is not true. And we know this is not true because the Western media has incidentally told the truth about this. So this was 2016. In China, rise of Salafism fosters suspicion and division amongst Muslims. And you really should read this whole article. There's a lot of really important facts in here, and it gives you a background of just how artificial the radicalization was of Xinjiang. And here, let's look. In 1984, Beijing began allowing individual Chinese Muslims to make the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, Saudi Arabia. And by 1990, nearly 10,000 Hui were flying out each year. Some learned about Salafism and, enamored with the idea of a purer form of Islam, spread its teachings at home. Meanwhile, Saudi preachers and organizations began traveling to China. Some of them bore gifts, training programs for clerics, Qurans for distribution, funding for new Islamic institutes and mosques. The form of radical Islam, the twisted and perverted version of radical Islam that these Uyghurs were adopting, was not something they were doing on their own. It was being imported from Saudi Arabia very deliberately. And we know that it's very deliberate because this is something the US and Saudi Arabia have done together for decades. This is a Washington Post article. This is from 2018. It's titled, "Saudi Prince Denies Kushner's in His Pocket." That part of the story is really not relevant. It's, again, all the way at the bottom. The most important things are buried. So they're talking about the Saudi prince, and they asked him, when asked about the Saudi-funded spread of Wahhabism, that is the extremist version of Islam that Saudi Arabia was exporting to Xinjiang, the austere faith that is dominant in the kingdom and that some have accused of being a source of global terrorism. Mohammed said that investments in mosques and madrasas overseas were rooted in the Cold War, when allies, the United States, asked Saudi Arabia to use its resources to prevent inroads in Muslim countries by the Soviet Union. And the US and Saudi Arabia have done the exact same thing to China in Xinjiang through the Uyghurs, and they've done the same thing to other countries like Libya and Syria. Those extremists that are being armed and funded by the West and their regional allies, that is part of this same game that they've been playing for decades. And remember, this is 2016. In leaked email, Clinton claims Saudi and Qatari governments fund ISIS. And down here, the email states, "We need to use our diplomatic and more traditional intelligence assets to bring pressure on the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which are providing clandestine financial and logistic support to ISIS," or they say ISIL, "and other radical Sunni groups in the region." So it's funny how the Saudi prince was blaming the US and the US is blaming Saudi Arabia. This is like two criminals who rob a convenience store and then they get caught by the police and they're trying to shift the blame on each other to save their own skins. It's the exact same idea, just on a geopolitical level. Getting back to Xinjiang, the LA Times admits that Saudi Arabia was exporting this political, radical perversion, if you will, of Islam to Xinjiang. They were radicalizing the Muslim communities in Xinjiang. And the Associated Press back in 2017 admitted that it was such a huge terrorist problem that it was going international. And the purpose of this was, just as the US and Saudi Arabia funded extremists in places like Afghanistan to push out the Soviets, they were doing this in Xinjiang to carve Xinjiang off from the rest of China. And this is something the US still openly backs to this day. If you go to the US government's National Endowment for Democracy website, and you go to their webpage for Xinjiang, it's listed as Xinjiang/East Turkestan, and then China. And if you go to any one of these organizations, if you go to their official websites, like say the World Uyghur Congress, and you go to About Us, Who We Are, Mission Statement, Opposition Movement Against Chinese Occupation of East Turkestan. So the US government is openly funding separatist groups that seek to carve Xinjiang off from Chinese territory. What did the AP report actually prove? What did they prove here? What did they discover in Xinjiang? They discovered that Xinjiang has prisons, just like every other state or province in the world, including the Vatican, as a matter of fact, which is funny because they mentioned the Vatican, which has absolutely nothing to do with this at all. But this BBC article from 2012, who, what, why? What's it like to be a prisoner of the Vatican? So even the Vatican has a prison. So that's all AP discovered in Xinjiang, that Xinjiang has prisons, just like everywhere else in the world. The prison was filled at less than half capacity, unlike US prisons, which are overflowing and overcrowded with inmates. So I thought it was important to expose just how dishonest Associated Press is in general, because I saw them do an article about the protests here in Thailand. It was equally dishonest, deliberately dishonest. And I think it's very important to keep putting the pressure on the Western media regarding these lies that they're telling about Xinjiang. And I also think that it's important to give a wider background of this crisis and show how this is not just a smear campaign against China and Beijing, but this is part of a concerted effort to transform the crisis in Xinjiang into a much wider security crisis that we've seen before China got a handle on it was affecting the region and the world. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share it. Think about subscribing. It helps the channel grow and it's free to do. Check the video description for all of the links that I covered in this video. There's a lot of them, and go through them and look through all of these links. There's so much information there. In the video description, there's also ways you can help support my work, like by becoming a Patreon member. Through Patreon, you support my work month to month. I give some of my Patreon members a sneak peek at upcoming videos. There's also channels of communication there where we can all talk to each other, share ideas, and kind of build a community around this work. To everyone everywhere who has been helping me in every way, even if you're just sharing my work or dropping kind comments in the comment section, thank you so much. It's what makes this possible. Please check out my new website, newatlas.report. There is no paywall there, and there never will be. All of my articles and videos will be available there for you to check out. If I ever get deleted off of YouTube, I back up all of my videos on other platforms and I will embed them on the New Atlas website. And as always, thank you for watching.